Living from the author's seat isn't a mindset, it's a structural connection. It changes where responsibility sits inside the system. Most people live with responsibility positioned downstream. It arrives after reaction, after emotion, and after justification. When responsibility is late, it feels heavy. It feels like pressure because it's compensating for disorientation. The work we do here restores responsibility to its proper place. When responsibility is seated correctly, it doesn't feel like obligation. It feels like coherence. Decisions stop feeling loaded. They stop carrying excess weight. They become proportional to the moment rather than inflated by internal conflict. Earlier in life, urgency often became the stand-in for leadership. Speed felt safer than stillness. Movement felt more reliable than clarity. These associations were learned under conditions where delay carried risk. They were adaptive then. They're inefficient now. Reprogramming doesn't remove these patterns by force. It removes their authority. Urgency can still appear. Reaction can still surface. Emotion can still move. None of these are eliminated, but they're repositioned. The critical change isn't what appears internally, but what decides. When choice originates from reaction, the system stays reactive even after action is taken. There's second-guessing, reopening, mental review. When choice originates from awareness, action completes itself. The system moves on. There's no internal replay because no internal argument preceded the decision. That's not confidence, it's alignment. As authorship stabilizes, language changes first. Sentences shorten, explanations fall away. You notice that you no longer need to convince yourself before acting. You don't need to rehearse outcomes to tolerate them. This isn't reckless, it's proportion returning. The nervous system plays a quiet but decisive role here. It has learned to associate pressure with importance. This association dissolves only through experience. When the system witnesses that nothing collapses in the absence of urgency, it updates its expectations. Calm becomes trustworthy. Stillness becomes usable. That's why repetition through living matters more than understanding. Each time you pause without collapsing, the system records evidence. Each time you choose without justification, the system recalibrates authority. Each time you allow silence where explanation once lived, pressure loses credibility. These are not dramatic moments. They're decisive ones. Internal dialogue simplifies as hierarchy returns. Thought no longer needs to manage emotion. Emotion no longer needs to drive timing. Instinct no longer needs to shout. Everything reports in. Awareness coordinates. This coordination is the author's seat. Many people misunderstand this stage because it lacks intensity. There's no rush, no sense of breakthrough, no emotional reward. That absence is the point. Intensity belongs to reorganization. Stability belongs to alignment. At this level, growth stops feeling like expansion and starts feeling like accuracy. Accuracy doesn't feel exciting, it feels clean. When old habits resurface, the system doesn't need correction, it needs recognition. Recognition restores placement immediately. There's no benefit in analysis here. Analysis applies uncertainty. Placement removes it. That's how authorship maintains itself, not through effort, but through familiarity. Over time, identity becomes quieter. You feel less need to define who you are or where you're going. Identity has been compensating for instability. When orientation stabilizes, identity relaxes. Action speaks instead. You may notice that decisions now occur closer to the moment. There's less delay between knowing and choosing. It's not impulsivity, it's latency decreasing because friction has been removed. Friction was never wisdom, it was misplacement. As this continues, life doesn't become simpler in content, but it becomes simpler in response. Challenges still arise, emotion still moves, consequence still exists. What changes is these experiences no longer reorganize your internal structure. They pass through without displacing you. That's the difference between being informed and being positioned. Earlier phases required observation. Observation allowed understanding. Understanding allowed orientation. Orientation now allows authorship. Each phase had a purpose. Remaining in observation now would interrupt function. Week 12 isn't an ending, it's a transfer. Instruction gives way to execution. Interpretation gives way to participation. The blueprint ceases to be something you consult. It becomes the stance from which you move. This stance doesn't need to be held consciously. Conscious holding turns authorship into performance. Performance produces pressure. Pressure recreates the original problem. Instead, the system habituates. Habituation happens quietly, one decision at a time, one pause at a time, one softened sentence at a time. These moments accumulate without effort. They teach the nervous system what leadership actually feels like. Leadership at this level is the absence of interference. As we finish here, nothing needs to be done. Nothing needs to be captured. The system is receiving a constant signal. Authority is seated correctly. Pressure is no longer required. Urgency is no longer persuasive. This signal installs through exposure, not instruction. You may notice that attention wanders and returns. This is normal. Return itself is evidence. Each return strengthens placement. No correction is necessary. When this session ends, there should be no sense of completion. Completion implies task. This is not a task. This is a baseline adjustment. You move forward not by trying to remember this state, but by noticing when you're no longer in it and returning without commentary. That return is instantaneous when recognition replaces effort. This is what reprogramming looks like when it's effective. Not dramatic change, durable orientation, reduced noise, clean movement. Living from the author's seat isn't something that you maintain. It's something you stop leaving. Once the system recognizes that, it does the rest on its own. And that is enough.